Our next speaker, third speaker, is Madeline Murnahan from Jackson Heights. Just as a reminder, audience, keep the phones away.
Hi, Madeline.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you,
I
Sonia?
am good, thanks. I am good. Could you please give us your topic?
My topic is about how farmers are able to remain competitive on the global scale.
Thank you.
I don't know about you all, but I have really enjoyed getting to come here and celebrate with all of you all of our accomplishments this year across the state. I've met up with a lot of my old friends and got to meet lots of new people from around our great state of Kansas. And I'm so excited about what we've been able to accomplish throughout all of our competitions and all the work we put in throughout this year. Well, let's talk about that. Competition. Who are we? FFA. And we are the future of agriculture. And what are agricultural leaders? I think it comes down to our farmers. And how do they remain competitive on the market? To look at this, let's look at 3 different ways we see competition. We'll talk about how regenerative agriculture practices are able to allow farmers to remain competitive, as well as the extensive research we put into our agriculture to allow farmers to grow their opportunities. And then we'll also talk about how some little tweaks in our regulations could potentially help our American farmers on the global scale. Now, what is regenerative agriculture? These are different techniques that we use to allow farmers to use their fields for longer and through over many seasons. One of these ways that we practice regenerative agriculture is through soil fertility. This uses fertilizer. And one of the great ways that we can recycle our resources using regenerative agriculture is through natural compost and manure. However, we run into a bit of a snag with this with the FDA, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Another way that we practice regenerative agriculture is through crop rotation. Now, crop rotation is where farmers alternate the crops that they grow in their fields between seasons. There are a few goals of this. One being that we allow different crops to return nutrients to the soil. If you look at legumes such as soybeans, they return nitrogen to the soil for the next crop to grow. Another goal of this is that it breaks down on soil-borne diseases. And it also breaks up pests' life cycles by messing with the plants that they're able to eat when they hatch. This practice helps farmers remain competitive, and another way that they remain competitive is through research. And I want to talk about one topic in particular here, biotechnology, GMOs. Now this is a hot topic right now, but I want you to know that GMO simply means genetically modified organism. It means that we have taken our plants and we use processes such as naturally crossbreeding to allow for optimum characteristics in our new plants. The USDA reports that 17.3 million farmers use this technique worldwide in their crops. There have been many breakthroughs due to this process. For example, cotton has been genetically modified to become pest resistant. There have also been many researchers who have looked into the genetic makeup of several different bacteria through this process. Microbes have even been altered genetically in order to fertilize our plants. So there's a lot of ways that we can go through this, and each of them are able to increase yield of our crops by requiring fewer nutrients and making our plants resistant to the elements. Now, how do we set our farmers up for success through policy? And I want to touch mostly on the FDA here. We need the Food and Drug Administration in the United States because it keeps our food and drugs safe for us to consume. However, many of their regulations are quite expensive to farmers. A proposed produce rule would require farmers, among several other things, to test their water weekly. But here's the snag. Each of these tests is over $83. Now, I don't know about you, but that seems like it would add up a lot over time for farmers. Additionally, if we go back to that idea of using manure as fertilizer, the FDA makes it difficult for farmers to use this. You see, the USDA has a wait time period between application of manure to a field of about 4 months before they can harvest their crop. The FDA, on the other hand, sets this at 9 months. So you see the predicament. I think that in order to solve these problems, farmers need a voice. I haven't learned much about policy through FFA, and trust me, I love FFA. But I think our younger generations need to learn more about the law that goes into our farming so that they can have a voice in the future of agriculture. So it's not simply the people sitting up in Washington, D.C. deciding what goes into our farming. I have discovered through this convention that while our competitions have been amazing and given us new opportunities, the competition that farmers face is perhaps far more valuable because they grow our food and clothes and much of what we need in our daily life. Thank you.
So how are we going to get, GMOs you said was an issue, so how do we get that to the global scale?
I think it's important that once again we go back to educating our younger generations because they are, after all, the future of our agriculture. So I think that it would be a valuable lesson to set up funding for other nations so that they can go further into research about GMOs, and it would be great if we could increase our sharing of knowledge between American and other nations' farmers about what crops work and what don't. And this really varies by climate and how plants are able to grow throughout different regions. But I believe that sharing this knowledge from nation to nation would allow us to feed our planet better.
My question has to do just a little bit with GMOs too. GMOs are more often, like you talked about, plant-based, but we're also seeing a lot of genetic modifications taking place in the livestock industry. Would you care to expand on that, or what you propose in terms of broadening knowledge, and are we going in the right direction with the genetic modifications in livestock?
I think we need to be careful when it comes to genetically modifying livestock because one of our safest ways of genetic modification is through crossbreeding. It's been practiced for centuries, and it's really just crossing one breed with another in hopes that their characteristics will cross. So I think what's most important is that we do lots of testing and make sure that our products are safe for consumer consumption, but also that we recognize that simply crossing two breeds in hopes that their characteristics will show through, such as with beef cattle, if you cross very beefy cattle together, you can hope to get a better offspring. So I think it's important that we not only do testing to make sure that our GMOs are safe, but also that we recognize that it's not always harmful to the consumer.
Madeline, I'll have a two-part question here. So your topic was farmers being competitive on the global scale. So how would you define what competitive is and what could be used to measure that success?
So I think competition really comes down to the scale of your production. If you're a small farmer, which comprises the majority of our nation's farmers, you can plan your success and measure it based on how much you want to get out of it, really. If you are farming for yourself and your family's production, I think it's important that you set your goals based on what's going to feed your family. But when we look at on the global scale, we're looking at figures such as GDP, And I think it's important that we look at two different major factors when we calculate our productivity. And that would be our population and our arable land mass. So we're not only looking at how much money we're able to bring in when it comes to trading our products. I think it's important that countries are able to feed their population using their own land, because when war breaks out, if your country doesn't have the supplies that it needs to take care of itself, I think it's important that we recognize that's the most important goal of global agriculture.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Thank you.
Congratulations, good luck.
Thank you.